Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. Quite a few parents I work with have adult children who ask them to use gender pronouns that are different from the ones they grew up with. For example, they wish to be called he and him or they and them instead of she and her. Today I'm going to talk about why and how to use the gender pronouns that your estranged adult child identifies as correct for them. And if you don't know which pronouns your child is using, it's perfectly okay when you get a chance to ask about their pronouns. I need to say, right off the bat, that this is not a social commentary podcast. This is a show that's about just one thing, and that is helping you reconnect with your estranged adult child or children. Everything I say in every episode is in the service of that aim of reconnecting. And although I personally choose to respect people's pronouns, whatever they may be, no one is going to force you to use words you don't want to use. You never have to do anything when it comes to your relationship with your child. Your boundaries around what you're willing to say and do are yours to decide. But although you do have freedom and choice in the matter, the choices you make about your child's pronouns will almost certainly affect your relationship, for better or for worse. So if you're not open to using different pronouns for your adult child, you're allowed to not be open to that. You probably won't find much of interest in this episode, and you might want to skip to another one. But if you are on board with making some changes, then I'm going to present a very brief and very rudimentary introduction to why and how to use your child's personal pronouns. I'll put links in the show notes where you can do more research about pronouns. A quick note, I'm not using the term preferred pronouns because the word preferred is a little bit problematic. For those of us who are comfortable with the gender recorded on our birth certificates, it can be hard to grasp the importance of the words people use when they refer to us. The assumptions people make about our gender are more or less in line with our identity. There may be resistance to using pronouns for other people that seem wrong, are hard to remember, or were traditionally considered ungrammatical. There may also be a deep sense of loss when the person you've loved all this time as your son or your daughter no longer identifies that way. You can accept your child completely and also grieve that loss. Support and grief are not mutually exclusive. Even in your grief, try to hold in your mind the fact that people who don't identify with the gender ascribed to them at birth do not claim different pronouns simply to confuse, irritate, or harm their family members. Imagine telling someone your name, and they say, "I don't like that name for you, so I'm just going to call you this other name that I think fits you better, or that I can remember more easily." Or what if they said, "Your name is ungrammatical in my language, so I can't call you that." Now imagine that just about everyone you met agreed that your name was just too hard for them to use. Wouldn't it be meaningful to you if there were some people who cared enough to ask about your real name and to use it? Just like names, pronouns are personal. Using your adult child's pronouns shows that you see, care about, and respect who your child is. Those are just a very few words about why it's important to inquire about and use your adult child or children's pronouns. Again, have a look at the links in the show notes for much more on that. If you're willing to embrace your child's pronouns, but you're concerned about not getting it right, good news, you're already getting it right. Your desire and concern for your child's pronouns is more important than doing it perfectly from the get-go. But to help you feel a little more confident, here's a tiny crash course in the very basics of using gender pronouns. This is a subject I'm still learning about myself, and like everything else having to do with people, it's an evolving picture. So do go to those links I mentioned for the most accurate, up-to-date information. First, the easy part. Use your child's pronouns only when speaking or writing to someone else, not when you address your child. If your pronouns are she and her, I'm not going to use them when I'm speaking directly to you like this. I'm going to use you and your, as in, here are some ways you can use your child's pronouns. I don't say, here's how she, her can use she, her's child's pronouns. So when you're speaking or writing directly to your child, nothing changes. Just say you or use their name. Pronouns only come into play when you're talking to someone else about your child, even when your child isn't there. And you might say, well, then why does it matter if my child isn't even there? It matters very much, and I'll say more about that later. Meanwhile, here's an example of pronoun use. Let's say you used to say, I invited my daughter to dinner and told her I'm making her favorite dessert. She said she'd love to come for dinner, and I'll be so happy to see her. If you now understand that your child's pronouns are he and him, you would simply swap he for she and him for her, and you know how to do that. I invited my child to dinner and told him I'm making his favorite dessert, etc. But let's say your child's pronouns are they and them. Although they and them might seem ungrammatical, those pronouns do follow the usual rules of grammar. You already know how to use the words they and them and theirs correctly. So apart from remembering to use them, they're not that hard. Let's say your child's name is Joe. I invited Joe to dinner and told them I'm making their favorite dessert. They said they'd love to come to dinner, and I'll be so happy to see them. If the person you're talking to gets confused and says, how many people did you say were coming? You can just say, my child's pronouns are they and them, or my child goes by they, and leave it at that. Another set of pronouns to be aware of are sie and hier, or sie and zir. For example, I invited Joe to dinner and told her I'm making her favorite dessert. Sie said she'd love to come for dinner, and I'll be so happy to see her. Your child may ask you to use other pronouns, or no pronouns at all, in which case you'd say, I invited Joe to dinner and told Joe I'm making Joe's favorite dessert. Joe said Joe would love to come for dinner, and I'll be so happy to see Joe. If you make a mistake with pronouns, briefly acknowledge and correct it, apologize and move on. There's no need to explain or defend your good intentions, because just noticing you made a mistake and correcting it broadcasts your intentions. As long as you keep trying sincerely, you will improve over time. And that will say more than you could describe in words about the love and respect you have for your child. Now, especially during estrangement, your child may not be around to hear you using their pronouns. But everyone you speak to is, first of all, a practice partner. You don't want to sit down for your first family dinner with your child in a long time and not have been practicing using their pronouns this whole time. You'll want to be able to relax and enjoy your child's company knowing you're already a pro at using their pronouns. In addition to providing you with practice, everyone you speak to about your child is a potential conduit. You can't anticipate what will get back to your child from any conversation you might have. Information travels far and fast and in mysterious ways. The language you use when referring to your child matters. Words matter in general. In fact, you might want to review episode 122 called Language Matters. Everything you say and do with regard to your child during estrangement can either help or hinder an eventual reconciliation. Contact with your child is not the only way to make investments in the relationship. If your child is using gender pronouns you're not used to, you have a valuable opportunity before you to express your commitment to a loving and respectful relationship across the distance, even if you're not in touch right now. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.